Stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are returning to On Your Own, my segment on solo decks and solo deck building. The deck in focus today is something I call Lucky Penny Preston, and we will get right to it. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these deck reviews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. Some of you may remember when Nate, Lost in Time and Space, and I did our review of the Rogue cards in A Light in the Fog. We didn't have very many good things to say about Lucky Penny, one of the new exceptional rogue assets in that pack. The card seemed very inconsistent, slow, and very random to boot, since it involves flipping a coin every time you draw a Bless or Curse token from the bag. We didn't have a lot of good things to say on it. I guess all that glitters is not gold, as they say. However, I decided that I would challenge myself to create a Lucky Penny deck that would try to leverage the card in order to draw tokens from the Chaos Bag and then flip the coin and hope that we can draw additional cards using Lucky Penny. This is the deck that I came up with. I settled on Preston Fairmont simply because he has access to so many of the survivor cards that enable him to add bless tokens to the bag. When you are playing with Lucky Penny, the key is to, when you draw a bless token, you need to flip a coin. If you flip tails, you convert that bless token into a curse token and then get to draw a card. Since Preston has so many ways to add bless tokens to the bag, he seemed like the ideal candidate for that. The overall framework of the deck is a traditional Dark Horse Preston build. Dark Horse Preston builds have been around even before Preston was released. He was one of the investigators who was spoiled before the Circle Undone was released, and I know that I think it was within a matter of days after he was spoiled. I was playing around with Dark Horse Preston builds. The archetype itself can be very powerful and very effective, and so it seemed like a good starting point for this Lucky Penny Preston build. The ultimate goal of the deck is to fill the Chaos Bags with Bless tokens using cards like Keep Faith, Tempt Fate, and Signum Crucis, which is a skill that you can leverage Preston's low base skill values in order to add Bless tokens. And then you leverage those tokens with a combination of Lucky Penny, Eye of Jinn, and False Covenant to draw cards, set your base skill value to 5, generate additional actions, and then return Bless tokens to the Chaos Bag. So a lot of good stuff in this deck. Of course, there's Fire Axe, which works very well with the Dark Horse Preston build, since if you're unfamiliar with that archetype, the idea is to not gain resources with Dark Horse and then just run the deck on his signature asset, Family Inheritance, the resources that it generates each turn. Dark Horse, of course, is, necessary. It's not a Dark Horse deck without Dark Horse. Track Shoes, good survivor card. And then Trial by Fire, another one of those amazing survivor cards that works very well with Preston, since he has very low base skill values. And the ability to set your base skill values to 5 for an entire turn is awesome. Before we dig a little bit deeper into the deck, I want to talk about the packs required for this one. Sadly, this is not what I would term a beginner deck. It requires 13 packs in order to build this one. You can make some substitutions, but there are not many cards that you can swap out. Of course, we need 2 core sets. The Circle Undone, which is where the Circle Undone Deluxe expansion, that's the expansion that Preston comes in with his signature cards. We need a copy of the Dunwich Legacy. Blood on the Altar, Undimensioned and Unseen is very important. Of course, that's where you get Dark Horse, so you can't really build a Dark Horse Preston deck without Undimensioned and Unseen. We've got cards from the Path to Carcosa, namely Resourceful, which can be very handy in recycling some of our Survivor cards. We need the Secret Name for Intel Report. We've got cards from the In the Clutches of Chaos, that is Trial by Fire. Return to the Forgotten Age, that gets us Backpack 2, which can be very helpful in trying to find our exceptional assets. You can get away without that, though, and you could probably just go, if you don't have access to the Return 2 product, you can always just go with the Forgotten Age, and that will give you Backpack 0. It's not quite as good, but you can also save yourself 4 experience points. We need, and of course, all of the Blessed Tech comes in the Innsmouth Conspiracy, Into Deep, Horror, and High Gear, and of course Light in the Fog, which you need for the Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny. Now, once again, I try to cap the experience points required to build this deck at around 19. I hate adding additional weaknesses to my deck, and so it seemed with between the Eye of Jinn, Lucky Penny, and the False Covenant and Signum Crucis, we were almost there. There's a little bit of flexibility, of course, if you want to get rid of the level 2 backpack. You can get rid of that for the basic backpack and try to play it that way, and then that'll save you 4 experience points, which you can use to put some other cards in the deck, and we'll take a look at some of those substitutions a little bit later. Of course, the deck is called Lucky Penny Preston, and so there are 3 assets that are really central to getting this thing off the ground. That being the Eye of Jinn, which is phenomenal in Preston, even though Lucky Penny can be... I'm a little underwhelmed by it, but the Eye of Jinn is excellent. The ability to set your base skill value to 5 and potentially ready that if you draw a Blessed token, or take an additional action with it if you draw a Curse token is phenomenal. If you can get Lucky Penny if you can get Eye of Jinn down early enough, that can really make you can run off that almost the entire game, to the point where cards like Trial by Fire aren't you almost don't need them. But it's nice to have Trial by Fire just in case you need to take extra actions each turn at 5, but the Eye of Jinn is a phenomenal addition. Now, Lucky Penny, that one is a little bit harder to judge. I mean, draw wins games in the Arkham Horror LCG. However, Lucky Penny can be tricky to leverage, since you do need a significant number of Blessed tokens in the bag to begin with. And then, of course, you've got to flip a coin, which you need tails in order to convert that Blessed token into a Curse token. And then when you do that, you get to draw a card. Now, I have played games with this where I have drawn all of my drawn all the cards that let me add Blessed tokens to the bag, but then I've never seen Lucky Penny. I've also had games where it's the opposite. I've gotten lucky and drawn quite a few Blessed cards at the beginning of the game, filled the bag with tokens, haven't seen Lucky Penny, then draw Lucky Penny, but by the time I've drawn it, I've used up all the Blessed tokens in the bag, and Lucky Penny isn't really worth playing at that point. So it's a tough card to judge. The deck doesn't really add a lot of Curse tokens to the bag, and of course Lucky Penny can convert those to Blessed tokens, but of course you don't get to draw a card with that. So you're really hoping to get Lucky Penny down early, and then draw the cards you need to add Blessed tokens. If you can get those 2 things working and get Eye of Jinn down on the table, you can actually draw a significant number of cards with Lucky Penny, which can really help out Preston. Preston doesn't have access to a lot of draw to begin with, being a rogue and a survivor off class. Draw is not common and not easy to come by in those classes, so having the ability to draw cards really helps. But you're kind of in an awkward situation because, of course, you need to be able to draw cards to draw Lucky Penny in order to draw more cards. So it's like, I need to draw cards to draw the card that will draw me more cards. So yeah, it can get kind of it can get a little bit difficult depending on how the game is going. Now, Backpack 2 is in there because, of course, Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny are both exceptional. They have the exceptional keyword, which means you can only include one copy of each card in your deck. And so we need a way to get access to those cards as quickly as possible. Backpack can help us do that. The level 2 version lets us search the top 12 cards of our deck for items, which we can stack on it. If you don't have access to Return to the Forgotten Age, of course, you can drop that down to Backpack 0, which lets you look at the top 6. So not quite as reliable as the upgraded version, but helpful nonetheless. And Backpack is also pretty good because the deck plays Flashlight, which we can grab with the Backpack, as well as Track Shoes, which is an amazing survivor card. Always nice to have on the table, and so Backpack can get you that as well. And that has happened in some of the games I've played where Backpacks pulled the Eye of Jinn or Lucky Penny plus a Flashlight and the Track Shoes. So it's nice to get that down on the table. The other key asset in the deck is False Covenant, which allows you to, you can trigger the response on it when you draw a curse token to exhaust it, and then throw that curse token back into the bag and draw another one. Now, the False Covenant creates some really interesting decision points in combination with Lucky Penny and Eye of Jinn, because when you draw say you draw a Blessed token with the Lucky Penny, you flip tails, you immediately get to draw a card because of Lucky Penny's effect. Lucky Penny now treats that Blessed token as a curse token, so you can use False Covenant to, you can exhaust for False Covenant and throw that Blessed token, that cursed Blessed token, back into the bag. It also gives you the option, if you have Eye of Jinn on the table, you can let that curse token ride and take an additional action. If you happen to use the Eye of Jinn during that particular action, you can get an additional action with it. So it gives you some interesting decisions to play with as you're playing the game, and that makes the deck quite fun to play when it's firing in all cylinders. You get a Blessed token, you flip tails. It's like, okay, do I need, I'm getting the card draw automatically, but do I want the extra action? Or do I simply want to pass this test and I don't want to have to deal with the -2 from that curse token? And it provides you a way to sort of conserve your Blessed tokens in the bag a little bit, in case you start running into issues where you're simply drawing too many Blessed tokens and you're going through them too quickly. This gives you a chance to throw them back into the bag. But if you don't need, if you think you're going to pass the skill test even with that curse token in play, that -2, then by all means take the extra action with Eye of Jinn, and then perhaps you will draw, since you've got to draw another token anyway, you might draw another Blessed token, in which case, again, Lucky Penny kicks in. So you may, Lucky Penny is nice because it triggers every time you flip tails, so you have the potential to draw more cards. And if you haven't used your False Covenant trigger on the first curse token, you can use it on the second and throw that Blessed token back into the bag and sort of mitigate the impact of the curse tokens that way. So it creates some pretty interesting play. Now, if you decide to play this deck, but Lucky Penny isn't your cup of tea, because you just find it too inconsistent and random and decide to take it out, then I think Ancient Covenant's really the way to go in this build. It can prevent you from drawing multiple Blessed tokens because, of course, you draw a Blessed token, exhaust Ancient Covenant, and that stops the skill test dead in its tracks. So you're not at risk of, saying, drawing 2 or 3 Blessed tokens in a row and really blowing through a test that you really honestly just needed to pass a little bit by. You didn't need to kill it by going up +6 or something like that. And so Ancient Covenant is a good way of conserving those Blessed tokens. So I think if I was to play this deck, and sort of just say, to hell with Lucky Penny, I'm not going to bother with it, then I would switch from the False Covenant to the Ancient Covenant. But as it stands, I've been having pretty good luck with the False Covenant, and it does create some. It is a pretty fun deck to play once, if you can get the pieces on the table. Now, the nice thing is the deck is focused on Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny, but the Dark Horse Preston archetype is so strong that even if those cards never make an appearance, the deck is still quite capable of beating, I think, most scenarios just through the sheer power of the archetype that it's based on. Of course, we need ways to add Bless tokens into the bag, so that brings us to Keep Faith, Tempt Faith, and Signum Crucis. Of course, Keep Faith is amazing. You can add 4 Bless tokens to the Chaos bag as a fast ability, which is fantastic, and it's also a pretty good target for Resourceful once if you use Keep Faith and then trigger Resourceful later on a turn, you can pull Keep Faith back to your hand and add another 4 Bless tokens to the bag. If you can get that going a little bit, you can quite quickly add 8 Bless tokens to the bag, which gives you plenty of fodder for the Lucky Penny to convert into curse tokens for you. The other fast card we have is Tempt Fate. This one adds 3 Bless and 3 curse tokens to the Chaos bag, which is still pretty good. We don't really want the curse tokens. This is not a curse deck, so the curse tokens are more of a liability than an aid. But remember that Lucky Penny, you've got to flip every time you draw a Bless or a curse token. And sometimes it will convert those curses to Blesses for you, so that works out. And if that doesn't happen, of course, you can fall back on the False Covenant to mitigate the impact of those curse tokens somewhat by canceling them and returning them to the bag. Now, Signum Crucis is a level 2 card, and given Preston's pathetic base skill values, it's an excellent way to typically add 3 or 4 Bless tokens to the Chaos bag. It really depends. You need to time the test appropriately. Of course, investigation actions are easy to come by in this game, so if you can position Preston at a high shroud location and take an investigate action, you can easily add 3, 4, maybe even 5 Bless tokens to the bag, depending on the shroud value of that location. It's also good sometimes if you're fighting an enemy that doesn't have Retaliate and it has a high fight value or evade value. You can also try to leverage Signum Crucis that way. But I tend to use it on investigate actions. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. It's also another good option to fetch back with Resourceful. If you pass a skill test with Resourceful, and you can go fetch yourself a Survivor card. Signum Crucis isn't a bad option if you don't need, of course, Look What I Found or Trial by Fire or something like that in order to gain some clues and stuff like that. If you've got the clues handled and you're not too worried, you've got Eye of Jinn on the table, so you take some pressure off that Trial by Fire, then Signum Crucis, you can fetch it with Resourceful. Of course, the deck is building on a strong foundation of the Dark Horse Preston archetype. There are fantastic cards in this deck, and like I said, it can win even if the Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny are buried at the bottom of your deck and you don't draw a backpack to fetch them. Leo DeLuca, the Louisiana line, is still one of the best allies in the game, and between Leo and the Eye of Jinn, if you're able to trigger the Eye of Jinn with the curse tokens, you do have the potential to generate significant action advantage over the course of a scenario. You can be taking 4 or 5 actions per turn with a little bit of luck, of course. I tend to value Leo's extra action quite highly. I mean, there are a lot of great rogue allies out there now, and we'll look at a couple of others here in a moment. but I still tend to fall back on Leo because that extra action you can use for anything can come in extremely handy. Of course, this is a Dark Horse build, so it wouldn't be a Dark Horse build without Dark Horse from Undimensioned and Unseen. Dark Horse, of course, is great for Preston since he has a base skill value of 1 across the board, and Dark Horse immediately bumps that up to 2 and makes him a little bit more resilient. I guess the trick here is that you don't want to have resources in your resource pool, but that's easy enough because Dark Horse gives you the option of not gaining a resource during the upkeep phase. And then Preston has his amazing signature asset, Family Inheritance, which gets 4 resources every turn. So you can simply, you can take sometimes you end up taking the resource during the upkeep phase because you know you can spend it right away during the investigate, when you investigate on your turn, and then you can you get that +1 immediately. But of course, this works extremely well with cards like Fire Axe. That because Preston has no resources on him, you can get the +1 bonus, +1 damage bonus from Fire Axe right out of the gate, and then you can spend the resources on Family Inheritance to boost his combat skill up to like 6 on a test if necessary. Sometimes during the upkeep phase, it's very helpful to take that additional resource, even though it's going to turn Dark Horse off temporarily, just so you have an extra resource that you can spend on the Fire Axe, especially if you're going to be fighting an enemy with, say, 4 or 5 health, and you need to take a couple of extra actions to kill it. Of course, Trial by Fire is another staple in Preston Fairmont decks because it will set his base skill value to 5 in one skill for an entire turn. So if you need to investigate 3 times or fight 3 times, or you're worried about evading, this will set your base skill value to 5, and you're good to go. Sometimes I found with if you can get Eye of Jinn down early, Trial by Fire tends to sit in my hand, but I would be very reluctant to cut this card because it has saved me in several games where I have tapped the Eye of Jinn to do something else, but I still need a 5 in a skill going forward. And of course, Preston is one of those investigators who has the money to pay its 3 resource cost, which is a little bit steep. Of course, discovering clues is very important when you are playing solo. Preston's pretty much got the fight angle handled by using Fire Axe, and of course he's quite capable of evading as well between his 1 agility, and then you get 1 from Dark Horse, and then you can get another from Track Shoes. He can go up to 3. If you're playing Dig Deep, you can get extra agility skill icons by spending resources, but you need clues. So we've got Flashlight, of course, which is great for sniping clues at those 1 or 2 shroud locations, which are pretty plentiful. Doesn't work as well when you are at 3 or 4 shroud locations because Preston simply doesn't have the intellect to pass those skill tests reliably. But in those cases, you can fall back on cards like Look What I Found. I mean, a survival staple that's in pretty much every Survivor deck these days. The ability to snag 2 clues for 2 resources is absolutely fantastic. And of course, Intel Report, which came out, I believe, in the secret name, which lets discovering 1 or 2 clues without making a skill test. That's right up Preston's alley. He doesn't want to make skill tests if he can help it. And Preston is one of the few investigators who does have the cash flow to trigger either response is necessary. So if 1 clue isn't going to cut it, you can spend an extra 2 resources to grab an additional clue. And if the clue happens to be at a different location, you can trigger that the second response to target other locations on the table. So if you get stuck in a position where there's an enemy at a location and you don't want to go there, Intel Report is your friend. And so between Flashlight, Liquid Eye Found, and Intel Report, you usually have enough Investigate to get the job done. But I have had games where it's been touch and go. If you don't see the cards, it can be a little tricky you end up sometimes taking a lot of Investigate actions at very low odds, which is not really a position you want to be in. Of course, as I mentioned before, Liquid Eye Found being a good resourceful target if you need a couple extra clues. Now, there are a few future considerations for this deck. The one card that I considered but ended up not using because I wanted to keep the experience points capped under 19 was Priest of Two-Face. The Priest gives you a chance to add 3 Blessed tokens to the bag immediately when he hits the table, and then he will be adding Curse tokens. He will be dripping Curse tokens into the bag over the next couple, as long as he's on the table after that. But he's cheap. He adds the 3 Blessed tokens, and he's got quite a bit of Soak, 2 health and 2 sanity. Not that Preston really needs it. Preston, I find he's pretty resilient with his 7 health and 7 sanity. So Soak is not something I've found I've needed, but there are scenarios where it can come in handy. As good as the Priest of Two-Face is at adding Bless and Curse tokens to the bag, he does have to compete with Leo's action advantage, and that's pretty tough. I'm not sure I would give up Leo for the extra tokens. And Leo's just not the only good investigator. Of course, we've got the only good ally, I should say. We've also got allies like Lola Santiago and whatnot who give this guy a real run for his money. If you were interested in experimenting with the Priest of Two-Face, I would recommend probably downgrading Backpack to level 0. That frees up 4 experience points, and then you can pick up a copy of Charisma for 3, and then you could pick up a couple copies of Priest of Two-Face. I believe it costs 1, which would put you at around 19. Of course, then you'd have to cut a card or 2 in order to find space for the Priest of Two-Face, and the deck is pretty tight as it is. I'm really not sure what I would be willing to cut to make room for them. All in my playtest with this deck, all of the cards in it have come in handy at one stage or another, so I'd be very reluctant to cut something. Perhaps 1 copy of Trial by Fire would be okay, but it's a tough decision if you want to try to jam the priests in there. Now, another card that is worth considering if you don't care about a 19 XP cap, which adds 2 weaknesses to your deck if you're playing standalone. Drawing Thin is another option. Drawing Thin was in the Dark Horse Preston build before it got added to the optional list of taboos. It was a very good way for him to generate resources, sort of secondarily, because he has his abilities sort of makes it more difficult for him to generate resources with Drawing Thin. But it is a good draw option for him, and I think the deck sort of misses that option to draw cards with Drawing Thin. If you don't care about the list of taboos, great. You can get you can add Drawing Thin to your deck at level 0. If you're sticking with the list of taboos, 2 copies of Drawing Thin will set you back 6 XP. So then you're probably looking at at this deck probably closer to 29 experience points rather than 19. So that's an option. Of course, you can also try to drop Lucky Penny. That gets you that would get you part of the way there, but again, it's really what do I cut to fit some of these cards in the deck, and I've been pretty happy with how the deck has been playing so far. So those are some very tough decisions to make going forward. But I think I'm definitely going to give the Priest of Two-Face a try to see how they work out. which would mean I'd have to get Charisma, because I'm very reluctant to give up on Leo. He's so good. So this the deck has performed. I mean, I'm beating scenarios with it. So, but I think that's more of an indication of how strong the Dark Horse Preston build is. The deck is very good, and it can beat scenarios even if Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny don't show up. And that really has been the problem so far with this deck, and is one of the reasons I'm really not sold on Lucky Penny quite yet. The deck does include 2 cards with the exceptional keyword, so consistency is an issue. Some games you simply don't see them, some games you see them too late. Some games you see them, but you don't have the Bless tokens. Sometimes it's the other way around. You've got all the Bless tokens in the world, but no Lucky Penny to leverage them. So the deck's consistency is pretty touch and go, it feels. Like I've in the practice games I've played with it, I've had it fire on all cylinders once, and the other games, it's sort of been like, well, it's just not... The game had already progressed so far that I simply either didn't need Lucky Penny or it just wasn't worth playing. Eye of Jinn, I would definitely keep in the deck. I think that's a stellar card. Again, it's exceptional, so you're not going to see it every game, so I wouldn't be too hasty to trim cards like Trial by Fire, but Eye of Jinn has been excellent. Now, the problem, of course, with including a lot of exceptional cards in your deck and then the Bless mechanic as well, is that the deck really feels like it's a step slower than the non-blessed counterpart, since 1, you've got to draw the Lucky Penny and Eye of Jinn, you've got to 2, fill the bag with tokens, and then... So there's a lot of moving parts, and it just feels a step slower. And in fact, when I sat down to build the deck a few weeks ago, and as I was taking cards out of the traditional Dark Horse Preston build in order to jam in Eye of Jinn, Lucky Penny, and the Bless module, I just felt like I was making the deck worse. I didn't feel like I was making it that much better. I was making it slower and less reliable. And that's not really a good feeling to have when you're sitting down to build a deck. I mean, I'm excited to play with cards like Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny, but when you sort of feel like I've taken this very powerful deck archetype and I've simply made it slower and weaker, that is not a good position to be in. We have seen spoilers for the last 2 Mythos packs. I have yet to receive my copy of In the Lair of Dagon. And Into the Maelstrom has been pushed back to May. But we've seen spoilers for those packs, and I don't think there's anything in those packs that is really going to help this deck or improve its consistency, which is a bit of a shame, I think. And I think that's part of the problem we're seeing with a lot of these Bless and Curse decks. There just isn't enough there to really push them over the edge. And I've had a conversation with designer MJ Newman about this, and she said that these cards are sort of balanced. The Bless and Curse mechanic is sort of balanced by the slowness that it takes to build up to it, and I can understand that perspective, but I think it might be a little too slow. Perhaps if there's a card that comes out at some point down the line, I don't even know if we'll get any more Bless and Curse cards after this cycle, but if there was a card that, say, added like a permanent that lets you add Bless and Curse tokens right at the beginning of a scenario, I think that would probably give these Bless and Curse decks the jumpstart they need in order to really get working, because right now they just feel a step too slow, and that's a bit frustrating. Now, honestly, I think the deck might be stronger if you ignore the Bless tech altogether and just play a more traditional Dark Horse Preston build. Your other option, of course, is to simply take out Lucky Penny, save yourself the 4 experience points, rejig it a little bit, maybe put in the Priest of Two Faiths, a Charisma, switch up the Rogue Allies, try that. Maybe I took out Take Heart for Signum Crucis. Perhaps, this deck needs the Take Heart. Maybe we need to look at taking something else out in favor of Take Heart, because it does give, it is one of the few ways Preston can draw a couple of cards. And so while Signum Crucis is nice in adding Bless tokens, maybe it's the card draw that you really need. And so maybe Signum has to go. I think there are some things you can do to sort of rejig this deck a little bit to try to improve it. But I really think, it comes down to consistency again, and until there's a really good way of for Preston to draw these exceptional cards quickly, I think it's going to be a challenge. I was even thinking earlier today, like maybe we go for versatile and get that what's her name? The Seeker ally who can fetch relics, since both Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny are relics. Maybe she could help, but again, if you're adding, you'd need to buy at least 1 copy of versatile to get 1 copy of her, 2 copies if you wanted 2 copies, and then of course you've added 10 cards to your deck. Suddenly you're playing a 40 plus card Preston deck, and you still don't have any way of drawing additional cards, and you're really just hoping that this ally will get lucky and pull the relic for you. So I don't think that's a very feasible option, considering that Preston's really lacks draw. And there's so few good options for Preston for drawing. Like typically with a rogue, you would go with Lucky Cigarette Case, but of course that involves succeeding by 2, which is not going to be easy for an investigator who starts off with base skill values at 1. You've got cards again like Pickpocketing. Again, you need to succeed by 2 in order to draw a card there. You've got cards like Rabbit's Foot. Maybe that's an option to consider, but then you're trying to fail skill tests in order to draw cards. Maybe if you go with the drawing thin Rabbit's Foot Take Heart angle, you could draw quite a few cards by failing a skill test. Perhaps that is something worth looking at to try to draw the Eye of Jinn and Lucky Penny more consistently. So I think this, while this deck works pretty well, it's been winning for me, which is I guess as good as a deck can do, and it's done very well in pretty much all the stuff I've played it in. But again, I think that's a testament to the strength of the Dark Horse Preston archetype, not Lucky Penny or Eye of Jinn or the Bless module. So yeah, I'll keep tinkering with it, and we'll see. Maybe we'll come back and revisit this deck at a future date if I find something that if some of the changes I've suggested help make it a little bit better. So that's going to do it for this episode of On Your Own, taking a look at the Lucky Penny Preston deck. So far, the deck is winning for me, but again, I think that has more to do with the Dark Horse Preston archetype than the blessing and the exceptional cards in it. Eye of Jinn is very nice, and I would certainly keep that. Lucky Penny, man, the consistency with it is just... I'm not sure it's good enough. When it fires on all cylinders, it's actually quite good. I drew the one game where it really worked out for me. I was drawing cards fairly consistently, which really helped me stack my hand and really set up a nice end game for me. But pulling that off consistently has been a real bugbear. So until I think we find a way of doing that, this sort of deck is going to be, I think it's going to struggle in comparison to the traditional Dark Horse Preston deck. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out the channel a great deal. I've got a lot of Arkham Horror LCG content coming up, and I hope that you will stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll be back soon with more. And until then, I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care out there. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.